you waiting all this time.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
You're an old hand at this. Doesn't faze you. All right. How do you pronounce your name? Is it Moepya?
Moepya.
Moepya.
Yeah,
I have
Moepya.
an ill-disciplined tongue. Okay, I think I got it. Okay. Should we straight ahead? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, good. You are the chairperson, the outgoing chairperson of the Electoral Commission, not so?
Correct.
So it would be safe to assume that you satisfy all the statutory requirements for one to be a commissioner
I think
in this body.
I
You're a
think
South
it's
African
safe.
citizen, not a member, high-profile member of a political party. All of that.
No, I'm not a member, and
Okay.
I think it's safe to proceed on that basis.
All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you rose to this position, as briefly as you possibly can?
Thank you. Well, I joined the Electoral Commission in 1998 in a technical area in logistics.
Where did you come from before that?
I came from Barloworld Logistics. Barloworld sold a division I worked in to Bidvest, but I was excluded from the deal and I left. So I headed the logistics division of Barloworld, and they were selling it to Renfreight at the time, and I thought no. I would rather move. And so I joined the Electoral Commission, and in those years, we were establishing many functions, and I had the privilege of establishing the logistics function as we know it today. I progressed shortly thereafter to a senior position. It was in fact after a year. After another year, I progressed again into another position, and I ended up in the executive of the IEC. Then I served, of the just under 19 years, I served in the administration of the commission. 16 of those years were either in the executive, in fact, they were all in the executive, and 5 of those 16, I was the chief electoral officer for the commission.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how many years have you been there?
It's just under 19. It's about 18 years, 7 months. I was in the administration. 11 of those, I was a member of the executive committee. I was sitting at the level of deputy chief electoral officer, and then another 5 as the chief electoral officer. I left in April. April 2017, I left the commission.
All right. In all these years, what would you say is the contribution you as an individual made to the commission, to help it discharge its constitutional obligations? And maybe let me just give you a full question. And what challenges do you see remain to be addressed, and what fresh insights, what you'd be bringing to address those challenges, if there are any, if you are given this opportunity again?
Well, the work of the Commission is not static, really. It changes, and we have seen that recently. In the last 5 years, I think that the Commission has gone a significant change in both the work it does. Its mandate has changed substantially. We have seen demands on the work of the Commission itself also changing. And let me give you 2 examples. We now have political funding as an institution within the institution of the Electoral Commission. It was not so before. It's a fairly recent development. It's something that has happened in the last 5 years. That's one. 2, I think in the political environment within which the Commission operates, about 10 years ago, if you managed 50 by-elections a year, it would have been a lot. In fact, it was less, I think. At the moment, we do by-elections almost weekly. And so there are significant changes in the work that has happened. And I imagine that those changes will continue to ring in at a very fast pace. But that's where we are. I think as I anticipate how things work or will work, I think, one, we will have a commission that not only operates for its own good. In other words, it would not be a commission that is internally focused. We have a significant influence as the Electoral Commission of South Africa to work that is done by other commissions, especially around us, immediately around us, but the contribution that the world expects from us. We have just come out of leading the Association of World Election Bodies as South Africa. We have finished our term there, but the demand for our involvement, our assistance, our leadership continues to grow. We don't, at least from where I sit, I anticipate that this commission, or the 5 members of this commission, would be leaders. They would not be just persons that will find something to do, will be persons that will be involved in a work of a great institution, but there will be people who will appreciate that the institution has done well, but there are great demands on the institution, and there'll continue to be great demands, and that they will make contributions that perhaps even other members of the commission before us have faced. I get to talk to previous members of the commission and chairpersons for that matter. And sometimes when we reflect at the work they have or the demands they faced, those are very different demands from the work that we do today. They were very, very important. They were tough in their time, but the demands we face today have changed and are tough in our time as well. So that's really what I think. And I do think that internally in the institution, there has been a demonstration without doubt that the institution is very well poised. It has very experienced, very good staff. They are authorities in many areas of the work that they do. They hold very well in their work against their or in comparison to their counterparts in the world. And so the task, therefore, is to lead people like those. It is to give them direction, to motivate them, to encourage them, and to set goals that are tough, but that must be achieved, for the demands that we face as a country.
Well, the candidates who came before you highlighted a number, well, let me say some possible areas of improvement in the manner in which the Commission conducts its business. And one of them made the point which I found quite frightening, to say the least, that the cost of running elections is escalating to a point where one of these days we may not be able to afford to hold an election. Would you agree with that assessment? And if you do, what is the problem? Who's not doing what they're supposed to do? What is missing? And how would this problem be stemmed?
Okay. On a light note, Chairperson of the session, I leave it to the panel to reflect on that. But from where I sit, really, South Africa has done well in looking at electoral democracy and how it functions in this country, at least from a governance perspective. You will recall that matter in 1999 of the new National Party versus the President of the Republic of South Africa and others, which was about what does the independence of this institution mean in terms of providing the finances, allowing it to do the work it is meant to do in the Constitution, how it is funded, and so on and so forth. That piece of jurisprudence continues to serve our country well. We are completely funded from the national fiscus. And government or administration after administration, that issue has not arisen again in a different disguise. So in my mind, that issue of our independence is settled. And if I understand this commission, and I know this commission, if that matter were to be revisited, I am sure it would be dealt with speedily, using the means of resolving it as quickly as possible. But I don't think it'll arise, because I think we have come to appreciate it as a nation, and we have come to appreciate it in the context of the work that the Electoral Commission is doing. So in my mind, the chances of one day being told there's just no money to do this work, I think they're fairly distant from where I sit.
But would you still agree that the national fiscus is severely strained?
Yes, that is the issue.
And that if there's room to cut on costs, those should be pursued.
Yeah,
is there such room in the operations of the Commission?
Yeah, I think that really is the issue currently. The issue is not so much whether there would be money. I think it is the extent to which funding would be available. And
maybe I exaggerated. You credit to the other candidates.
Yeah. I think, and we see it. We see it election after election. And I must say, we work with Treasury from the Commission's point of view. We work with them extremely well. We fight a lot, but we get a lot agreed and done. In the context of the economic situation and our national needs put together, I think one can't say, we have not been provided for. I think we do. You compete with health, you compete with education, you compete with all of these essential services, education, justice, all of them. And I think from that point of view, all of us have to find solutions that will help us deal with the work that we need to deal with in the best way possible. I can imagine that there are aspects of the work that we do. You know, when you print ballot papers, it'll cost 20 cents a page of a ballot. So you can, if you have 90 million to print, you have 90 million, you can multiply by 20 cents a page. But if you educate somebody, at what point do you say this is enough education, you're now stopping? So there are areas of work that will forever, need us to find better ways of resourcing them, better ways of collaborating with others, how best we can add value to those areas of work, and that's what we will continue to do. But I do think, from where I sit, my outlook is it's not doom. It is one that is tough and one that needs reason. And that's why I say leadership would need to find reason. They would need to find ways to deal with it. And that is, as I see it, the challenge that all of us in leadership positions, wherever we sit, have to accept, at least for now and for the foreseeable future, at least, we're going to have to deal with these issues and deal with them tough but well.
Are there any new lessons you derive from the last election? And if there are, what are they? And given another chance, how would you do things differently?
Chief Justice, no one election is the same as another. None at all. There are always going to be tough lessons we learn from an election. There are things you'd go into an election thinking, they would not happen, or you've done so well, that the chances of them not happening would be minimal. And they may still arise. So, when we come out of an election as a nation, and this I can't take credit for, I've just been a party, a part of that work happening here. But South Africa is very well aware that we cannot just come out of an election and say some things have not gone well. Let's see what we'll do with them in the last election. We actually debrief. We look at what exactly has gone wrong. We face our own devil, so to speak, and we confront them. We speak about them openly, and we see what it is that we can do. And we then, catalog all of those things that need to be dealt with. We prioritize them, and we schedule them in our program of action. If there are things that we need to do before the next set of elections, we will go and do them. If there's legislation that has to be proposed to Parliament, we will do that. We will go to Parliament and say, well, after consulting, obviously, extensively with our stakeholders, because that's how we debrief. We go through all of our stakeholders, political parties, the media, civil society organization, our own staff, in the institution itself. We will then end up in Parliament and look at legislation, and we will do that work. So that, in my view, is going to be a never-ending cycle of the work that we do. If we stop doing that, I think we will stop looking at improvements to the work that we need to do as a nation.
And how would you answer someone who asked you why you should be given a second bite at the cherry, and why this august opportunity should not be given to somebody else who will perhaps bring, new ways of doing things, new fresh thinking, fresh blood?
I have actually done it the other way around. When I was approached for to accept the nomination, I asked that question. I said, why should I, in your eyes, be doing this? I was convinced when those who approached me indicated a few things, three of which were: one, looking at how difficult elections are becoming, not only here, but around the world. And we can talk about that if you asked what some of those things are. Two, when we looked at where we are in our electoral democracy 30 years later, we're talking about an electoral reform panel whose work needs to be completed at the end of August this year. And once they complete that work, this nation will engage as to whether, what electoral system we need to use in 2029, not as to whether, in fact, when we get to 2029, what electoral system must be in place. Not only that, legislation must have gone through, well, in fact, consultations must have gone through, legislation drafted, electoral acts revised, and systems, IT systems and other things that we do would need to be done. When we look at that period between now and the elections taking place in 2024, everyone will tell you that period is very complex and is very short. So the people are saying to me, this is the time when we need steady hands the most. The third thing, and that for me, it's a thing that is humbling. People cited the fact that you have served with a great deal of commitment, of trust, and of integrity, and it's not time to do that. And I've accepted that. I've accepted the challenge that if it is so, if it is value that one can still continue to add, there is no harm. I am a South African. This is my country. I love the work we do, and the contribution would not be a problem to make if I'm able to make it.
All right, I'll pause here. Public protest.
Thank you, CJ. Good afternoon, Mr. Moepya.
Good afternoon, Advocate Elega.
Yeah, I guess if you are holding the fort and you again standing for the position, it can't be that easy because it's not about what you are going to do, it's about what you have done.
Yes.
What have been your highs?
Well, it has been, seeing every one of the tough challenges completed and the work standing. It is almost like the pinnacle of the work that we do. There are times when you do it, and particularly in the last elections, you thought that the end is not coming as quickly as you wanted it to come, but it comes, and it's not because you're waiting, it's because you are contributing, you're making significant contributions to bring that about. And so for me, serving this nation in that capacity has been a great honor and a privilege. There are many South Africans who could have done it. It just happened to be us at this time.
The Moepya matter.
Yeah.
What do you think you could have done differently?
As they say, hindsight is the perfect science. It's when you look at what has happened and, now that you did something, that's not exactly what, happened. But Moepya, as you would recall, Advocate Kalega, is a matter that is very intricately related to CAM. In CAM, there were a number of issues. I can think of 4. In CAM, something very fundamental happened. There were by-elections that were taking place. I think there were 7 of them. There were provisions in the Electoral Act, in Section 16 of the Electoral Act, that dealt with the voters' roll and how how it is provided and what details of that role are provided. it had a provision that says we provide addresses where addresses were available. Previously, when voters registered, the important thing was the station at which they registered, because that's where they were going to vote. And they were told it would be their place of ordinary residence. When CAM came, it changed that very deeply. It said addresses being available doesn't mean available to us. It means that there is an address, and we needed to have that address and make it available to anyone that needed that. And our voters' roll didn't have it. It was never that issue before. The second issue was that in the context of those 7 by-elections in Tlokwe, which had a context within which they happened, there were 7 people who were expelled from their party. They stood as independent candidates against their party, and so raised these things and said, we are disadvantaged because we are individuals and we don't have facilities. We need you as the commission to be providing addresses for us so that we know how to campaign in specific areas. So it raised the question not only just of the voters' roll. It said a voters' roll must be accurate. It must provide addresses that someone can go and use for campaigning purposes. The third thing was that the parties were suggesting that in fact, they were not suggesting, it happened, the court favored them. The elections that were held, CAM said those elections must be set aside. They were not free and fair, or they couldn't have been free and fair because we did not have these things. And the court was with them on that score. So the question of the integrity of an election, the freeness and the fairness of the election was the issue. And of course, the painful thing was that those elections, by-elections, were set aside and we had to deal with them. After CAM, then Moepya came, and Moepya said, now that the issue of what the voters' roll should be like is settled, we now need to deal with this voters' roll going into a local government election and with a roll that did not have many addresses. We now wanted to have those addresses. And the question before the court was then, one, can we go into an election with that voters' roll, or must something fundamental happen? Secondly, should Moepya raise the question of how do we then deal with the voters' roll? Is it, the issue of addresses prospective, or is it an issue that is going to also be looking back, and dealing with those? Thirdly, it still continued to raise the issue of how do you make the voters' roll available? When do you make it available? And how does an election, its integrity gets ensured? And so the two cases put together have looked at an integrity of an election, what the voters' roll should accomplish in our nation, and whether persons without addresses on the roll should in fact be permitted to vote. There's a great deal of difficulty that still continues to raise today, because we do have persons that don't have a fixed place of residence. They live in an area within a ward, and that is the issue. But those are exceptions, and we need to deal with the general rule. I hope I have answered you in a long-winded manner, but I hope I have addressed your question.
Yes. Now, considering that you have this judgment and you've actually made the observation that it's actually a systemic challenge, okay? Considering the landscape of our country, rural, informal settlements, and so forth. So, what systemic reforms have you put in place to address the issues in the Moepya and CAM matter?
We have done quite a lot. There will always be some work that needs to be done. Let's start with what the court said. When the issue of the application was raised, whether it should be prospective or it should be, retrospective. The court agreed with us that the law can be applied retrospectively. So up to the point, and I think that point was 16th of December 2003, up to that point, there were many people on the roll that did not have addresses. There were still others that had. So the court determined that the 16th of December 2003 would be the cutoff date. If there were persons on the roll without addresses, those persons, we can harvest their addresses when they come to vote, but they will not be, disqualified by the fact that they did not have an address. So for persons after the 16th of December 2003, had to present their addresses. That work we have done to collect addresses, and we implemented many measures. We worked with institutions, that's South Africa, Telkom, those institutions that provide basic services and keep addresses of persons locally. We worked with them to find addresses where necessary, but we also spoke to the voters directly to get the voters. We have since moved because in the past, as you may recall, we used to register a person with a portable barcode scanning unit called a zip-zip. It had no way of capturing addresses. It only scanned the ID number, and you had to fill in a form manually, and we would capture that form. We no longer do that. What we do with the VMD is the address, the details are captured directly onto the VMD, and the two things, the address and the identity, go together immediately. And so whenever people register now as voters, we immediately have their addresses, and so we are fulfilling the Moepya matter completely, and the court is satisfied. You will recall it had a what do you call this order when you go and report back to the court regularly about what progress you make, and eventually, if you convince them that you've done enough, they discharge you from that. We had a supervisory order. We had a supervisory order from the court. We've been discharged from it, and we continue to do well. There's an element of work that we're doing for the future because people are finding ways of abusing it, and we have to deal with it through an amendment that we will put through on Section 15 of the Electoral Act and Section 16 of the Electoral Act to close some of the smaller loopholes. But the address thing is working. When someone doesn't have an address, we have sufficient particularities of that person, where they live, under that tree, at the corner of that long street, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Just a last one from my side. I take it that if you stand again for a position, it means that we have unfinished business. So for the term which you have agreed to stand for as a candidate, what innovations and initiatives do you think are required to take the IEC forward?
Well, there are two immediate ones, but there are three. If I add another one, that is unavoidable. The first is we need to settle part of the failings we had in this election in the eyes of the public. That was the part that was dealing with the electronic component of the voter's roll on the VMD, on the voter management device. People say the voter management device did not work. And I understand because, perception in the work that we do is more current than reality. It has more currency than reality. The issue, simple issue is that, the voter's roll is printed at every vote, for every voting station, there's a voter's roll copy where names of persons are marked off when they come to vote. What we did, which is not required in law, was to advance that and ensure that we add another measure of checks and balances to improve the integrity of the elections even more. That we would have an electronic copy that matches the hard copy. That electronic copy is what became slow on voting day last year. And later that afternoon, we took a decision to say, we don't have to slow queues because of it, let's remove it. And that has been a very painful thing because people got the impression that the whole VMD doesn't work. It was one of 5 things we were doing with the VMD. 4 of them worked perfectly. And because they work perfectly, we don't even talk about them. One of the 5 others was the payment module for staff to confirm that staff members, over 200,000 people that reported for duty on that day, were in fact on duty because they were scanned on it in the morning, they're scanned on it when they leave, and we work out their payments on that. It has always been a problem in the past. It has worked like a charm on this instance. We paid people very quickly. In the past, 6 months later, there would still be people who say, I didn't work 2 hours, I worked 5 hours. And so those things worked. The opening and closing of stations, they work well. How we accounted for material we got to stations, it was on there. It was one of them. It worked well. You haven't heard people say ballots are short in this place or short in that place because this thing worked well. So the one challenge that we had with the voters' roll, it's one that we need to get. We need to get that right because we are going to general elections of local government next year. The second issue is the issue that relates to how we, as the Commission, how we deal with, we assist with the work of the electoral reform panel once it has become work that engages the nation. The Electoral Commission is the custodian of all election information in the country. And when you look at doing revising an electoral system, as we are doing at the moment, you have no time to practice like soccer players would practice to do something. The only thing you have is to use data based on previous elections to draw models and see how they would work. And I think this commission is poised to play a very crucial role in that aspect, in that it is not for us to say, if you do this, it'll favor smaller parties or bigger parties. No, it is for us to give information that will show decision makers that the effect of the models they choose would be this, that, or the other thing, and will help them. We will say it in words if we need to, but we would be careful. The modeling aspect is important. But thirdly, in the electoral reform work, there is going to be a point at which when issues of practicality and application are raised, we will need steady hands, experience, that expertise. And that is something that I think it's coming and one has to be ready to do. The last thing is we have to accept that a conversation is necessary to deal with issues concerning our voting and participation in voting, whether they be young persons and young persons in the main. But I think it's an issue I don't want to mischaracterize because it can be mischaracterized. The issue is simply this, that there are persons who are disenchanted with how they have experienced democracy. And they believe something different must be done. We have in the past, all of us thought that was a problem that we could address with providing, or supplying opportunities for registration and voting. We've increased voting stations. We've put online registration for voters. So it's no longer between 8 and 5 on a Saturday or a Sunday before elections happen. It happens every day. So we are finding that it's not just that. It's people saying, so I register and get what? And that is a conversation that does not require just us. It's a conversation, essentially, that political parties are going to have to answer. And answer by saying, let me listen to what you want. Let me see if I can tailor an offering for you. And let me see, once I've done that, if you would buy my solution. So we have discovered that voters register when there are options, there are attractive options for them. And that's really a conversation we need to have as a nation of those things that they believe are holding them back from what would be participation. Apathy would mean that they are not concerned. They're not worried about this. I don't think so. I don't think we have apathy. I think it's an expression of a desperate need to please pause and attend to this thing. And I think it's the third biggest thing I see, and I believe that we would need to facilitate, to see happen even before the next general elections.
Thank you, CJ. That should be all from my side.
Okay. I got a bit uncomfortable when you said, in the eyes of the public, is it the electronic voters roll? What do you call it?
The VMD.
The VMD.
Yes.
In the eyes of the public, it did not work. So, sorry, yeah, in the eyes of the public, it did not work. But then went on to admit that actually it did slow down progress such that it had to be done away with. That sounded defensive to me.
No.
Am I being unfair?
Yeah, I think you might, Judge. But let me say that, and thank you for raising it. I really say it very carefully, and I don't want to mischaracterize it. I'm saying that there were 5 things that we were doing there. 4 of them worked well, and that did not work well. And that's why I accept that we have to go fix it. So there's an acknowledgement up front. In all of the statements I've issued, I've never tried to hide it. I've never tried to defend it. I've said we will go and look at it. And we are looking at it. It has never failed since then. We have run quite a lot of by-elections. But when we go to a general election, there are other things we could have done better, and we will do better, because we will also look at that aspect of that work when we do stress testing. But also when we build other checks and balance, whether in this country, for example, you would be in a position to check 27 million names, 27.7 million names online immediately, up and down, onto the database and back. Those are the kind of things that we look at. And that's what I'm acknowledging. I'm saying that needs to be done. In the eyes of the public, for them, the VMD was a voters' roll issue, and the voters' roll issue only. I have accepted that when we explain, they say, well, that's what we saw, the others we didn't see. I accept that. I'm not saying we didn't fail, but I'm saying that is the challenge. We will rise squarely to face and to deal with. And for me, it's a great opportunity to at least set that in place and deal with it.
I suppose it's in the eyes of the public that it still rankled with me, because
Okay.
it tells me that in the eyes of the commission, it didn't.
No.
Why are these people complaining about the one thing that did not go right and are not commending us for the four that actually worked well?
No, Judge. And I must say, Chief Justice, all it takes is just to look on Google or anything, or on the statements we have issued. We've never defended that. We've acknowledged publicly. Last week we were in the portfolio committee. There were three major things, and I even raised the thing and said to South Africans, you have spoken. We have heard you. We must go and deal with it. So there's no defending it. In the work that we do, you can't bury a problem. You've got to deal with it, even if it's a perception. Even most times, like I said, those perceptions trade in a currency that's higher than reality. But you've got to deal with it. That's the space we occupy, and we've got to remove any impediment to people participating in the electoral process. That's the attitude that I take. And if I fail to say that, that's really what I was trying to say, CJ.
All right. Yeah. I accept that answer. Ref?
Yeah.
You covered advocate.
Thank you, CJ.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time to come over today. Sorry. Thanks for making the time.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to get your views on the issue of independent candidates.
Okay.
And what the commission in particular hopes to do to educate government and everyone else more around it. Why I say so is because in this country, the threshold to be a public representative is very low. And unless there are proper frameworks, we may end up with anyone who is unemployed, who can secure 1,000 names with addresses. And by the way, it's not even addresses, as you said, it's sufficient particularity. So corner of Madiba and what in Joe Slough or Squatter can be sufficient. So we may end up with people like that coming forward, traveling money somewhere to register and do what they're supposed to do. We've seen with the last elections how easy it is for individuals and groupings to fund people who want to be public representatives. What advice can you give to yourselves should you be reappointed to come back? But going beyond yourselves, Parliament, for example, which is the custodian of democracy, but you as those people who have actually been tasked to deepen that democracy.
No, thank you, and I think that's very important. I'll go back 2 steps. You recall I indicated that when the Electoral Reform Panel puts proposals on the table, and then Parliament opens them up to be considered, I think the work for this institution, the Electoral Commission, really begins in earnest date. It doesn't begin when the law is made. It is when it helps decision makers, policy makers rather, to say, if this is the option that is on the table, and we look at that as if it was applied to an election that took place in 1999, 1994, 1999, 2014, 2017, or 20, whatever, this similar kind, what would that mean for us? With independent candidates, by the way, inserted into the equation. That is the modeling part. And I'm afraid a lot of that makes it plain that certain things or choices that we made and believe are attractive, when you look at what they would be like once you have implemented them, you begin to think twice. I think that's the role that this institution should play. It should play it because it's a fair way of saying, look at this thing in its totality and what you want to get and get the best out of it. You would be inserting independent candidates. How would it be like? Or how would they be affected if you chose this option as opposed to that option, as opposed to that option? It would say, how does participation affect it? It would say, how do we require this country to be delimited, cut into different sizes, and why? Not just go cut and, it'll ask the question why. It'll say, are certain aspects of the assumptions we have made in the past still holding true today, given those things that... And so for me, this is possibly going to be very, very contested terrain. It's going to change how people have previously understood representation in a body like the National Assembly or provincial legislature, because it may have different configuration of seats, it may have a different configuration of geography, and so on and so forth. And that's what I'm saying. It's the work that the Electoral Commission will have to assist within less than a year, and work that would certainly need quite a lot of thought, expertise, and insight into those things. And this commission is poised to do that work in the best way possible, I think.
Can I go next question? Okay. I'm glad you actually was one of the few candidates who came today who said it's not about just setting up new voting stations. It's not only about technology. Here it is. It's open, and the numbers are still low. Something out there is not correct. I'm glad that finally someone is saying that, because I asked one of the candidates earlier, and I would like you to clarify for me. The election day in our calendar, in our laws of the nation, is supposed to be a holiday. But I've always been, what is that?
Special votes, an observer?
Observer, yes. Yeah. Since 1994, by the way, civic duty.
Yes.
There's, without fail, in the suburban voting stations, you find domestic workers who come with their employers, with babies in the pram or babies on their hands or something like that. But they're on duty. But this time around, because of the Section 24 challenge, a lot of them who don't want to come with their employers, because employers apparently tend to tell them which party to vote for, or threaten them, those who sneak out during lunch to go and vote, found that it was frustrating, not the queues, but the fact that they were being told, go to this and this station, you are not registered here. So there was a loss there of a lot of people who said, my employer does not know I'm here, so I'll have to go back. So I think it's those holes and leakages that the IEC has to look at. It is a day for people to stop work officially. It cannot be a day for employers to demand that you work. That is the day when you exercise your Section 19 in order to bring to life the rest of the Bill of Rights. And I think IEC there, if your duty to strengthen democracy it should be taken more seriously than that. I suppose it's commentary, but I just feel strongly.
Yeah, no, and I know. We continue to do. You continue to do work in that space. I think there are three things to be said. in addition to that, and really seriously, South Africa has not come here or has not arrived at this point by accident. It's been very intentional. The past has been far too painful. And South Africa says election day is one day only. That is voting, on the day that is proclaimed to be election day. But in truth, it has not forgotten about people in the position such as that of domestic workers, farm workers, emergency workers, newspaper, news people, and so on and so forth. It has gone and created special voting opportunities. And we market those special voting opportunities immensely. That's the first thing I wanted to say. And they happen to be 2 days, not one. We have, it used to be one. We've always gone out and advocated for more than one. That's number one. Two, we don't leave it to chance. We seriously engage, associations of organized labor, organized business in all of its categories. We do that with the retail trade, amongst others. We sit them down and say to them, you want businesses that are successful, that operate in a country that is whose democracy is stable and prospering. It takes people to vote, and you've got to allow them opportunities. If we need to provide opportunities there for people to vote, we do. And thirdly, we have to accept that we've got to make voting happen as quickly as possible before people lose an opportunity. To go back to an issue that has worried me, because the Chief Justice was saying we may be defensive, and we've been open about it. It's, in the last elections, there are at least about 800 stations that have really given us a bad name, because there the challenges were very well defined. Queues were long. They voted until late into the night or early hours of the morning. We have to go and redeem ourselves and deal with that. And we have options on the table that we need to go and look at. So all of those things put together means that we create more opportunities for people to have reason to participate in elections, to do so in a manner that confirms their dignity, assures them of our willingness to accommodate their specific needs, and do it. And all of that we try and do within the means that are available to us as a nation and a commission.
Just one last question. Mr. Moepya, if you were to return, you would have elections for 2026, 29, 31, and preparations for 2034. What are the key things that you say for 2026? This is key for me. And then the next national elections, 2029, this would be key. Afterwards, 2031, local government, this would be key. Just highlights. Because that would be your 7-year period wherein you are there. 2034, I'll excuse you, you'll be on your way out.
The most foreseeable thing is to address the things that people have felt, to assure them that, we don't want them in the queues for long, particularly in those 800 places, more or less. It's 800 out of 23,292, but they define the work that you do. We've got to go and address that. And I think, there's quite a lot of work underway to deal with it. I'm confident we're going to do. There's a part I did not want to talk about because I did not want to provoke another discussion. technology in elections must not be used for the sake of technology. But everything we do in this country is electronic, except for the act of voting and counting the votes. And those are now the last major challenges that we face. I accept that we're not going to move for the sake of moving. We've got to make a case. From where I sit, the case has already been made, but we need to make the time to sell it to the nation. I think 2034, you're most likely going to begin to be voting electronically. But that work is going to have to begin now. It is also going to be part of the work that as we look at what some of the electoral reform challenges would be, this would be a tagging problem that we would have to be mindful of on the side. And when you talk about that, people think, you're thinking people must just stay in bed and take their phone and vote from there. It may not be so. It might still mean that people come to a station, but they don't get a ballot paper issued to them individually. They go to a station, which is close to them even for that matter. They identify themselves onto the system. It recognizes that this is Mosotho Moepya, he lives at this street. It says, okay, Mosotho, you're registered, you're entitled or you qualify to vote for to vote for your representative in Gauteng, to vote for Gauteng province, to vote for a ballot for the National Assembly, and to vote for a regional ballot from Gauteng region to the National Assembly. And then you're able to do that. It gives you confirmation of the choices you made. It says, these are the choices that you've made. Do you agree with them? If you say yes, you print something, whether you keep it or you put it into a ballot box to confirm the electronic choice that you have made. We need to do that. I don't think, and people say, how do you talk electronic voting in a country that's unequal? When you think of electronic voting at that elementary level, it can happen in this country tomorrow. But you would need will and education and conviction. People think, Chief Justice, that pencils that we use or pens that we use to mark the ballot, they're magic ones. When you use this one, it's going to erase it. That's why I say perception is important in the way that we do. So you've got to deal with the question of perception to some level and then begin to do the work. We may have to run parallel. So I say 2034, these are things, opportunities that you would have. You probably may be even running parallel, but you may have developed something that is working along those lines. I don't think in South Africa, I'm thinking here, I don't think in 15 years' time we'll be voting in exactly the same way that we're voting today. It won't be, because the challenges are getting even more defined. The longer it takes to issue a result from a voting station, because there's a count and a recount and a dispute and so on, people are simply saying we can't wait anymore. Give it some speed. But at the same time, they say we want accuracy with it, and we want reliability. And those are the kind of things that technology is going to give you immediately.
Right. I'll hold my tongue. Chairperson, thank you very much for allowing yourself to be persuaded to accept the nomination. We wish you and the Commission all the best for the rest of the term and going forward.
Thank you.
Be preparing for important elections next year.
Thank you.
We don't want any hitches with that.
Thank you.
So we're right behind you.
Thank you.
You're excused.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's the end of today's proceedings. We adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow. At 10 a.m. we are starting, not arriving.